Another unit you don't see super often is Dragon Princes, and that is a shame, although they're probably not even in my top 5 best looking heavy cavalry just because the high elf style isn't really my thing. I do have to admit there is a certain something there, and in terms of Dragon Princes, they do offer a few unique kind of things about them. Here we've got another replay from the Emperor. He's gone High Elves versus Lizardmen. Prince on a Griffin leading the way. Honestly, very similar build to what we saw yesterday with Bretonia, but 2 Dragon Princes in replacement of 2 Grill Knights. Honestly, very similar in some ways, very different in some ways. We'll get to that in just a minute. Some White Lions here are going to be great against the Lizardmen in all aspects. Rangers, a couple of Archers, some Reavers to protect the backline as well. Very interesting Lizardman build, an interesting deployment as well. He's got this kind of vanguard force of Skinks with 2 Stalkers, cohort of Sotek backing them up. An Ancient Salamander, interesting choice, nice and cheap now, so easier to pay for itself, even if it only has like 5 HP. A couple of Saurus Spears, a couple of Bow Stegodons, which is interesting. We'll get back to them as well in just a minute. Cohorts, and a Life Slan leading the way. 2 Pterodons out there in the wings. Get it? Anyway. So, yeah, Dragon Princes. Now, one thing about heavy cavalry in general, and sort of checking around with elite heavy cavalry, Dragon Princes do have the least if you were to compare, like, Chaos Knights, Blood Knights, and Grail Knights. At 110 HP per model, Dragon Princes actually have the least. The Emperor here doing a good job of keeping them out of range of these Stegodons. Now, the Stegodons, with their missile strength, it is enough to just straight up one-shot unit models, right? Basically a cannon mounted on the back that does poison. Yeah, not as much single target damage as something like a steam tank, but still pretty significant and more than enough to just one-shot a unit model here, right? At 110, I mean, even with the physical resistance added in, and granted, that does help quite a bit. Of course, another great thing about Dragon Princes, very good melee defense while Martial Mastery is active, and the most unique thing about them, certainly 70% fire resistance. Now, given that a lot of people, you know, won't take Dragon Princes, like something like Chameleon Stalkers here, right? You think about, oh, they have got these flaming precursor missile attacks that the Dragon Princes are going to basically take 0 damage from. Ancient Salamander also, you know, Lizardmen are more likely to bring flaming tools now than they were before with the latest DLC, especially with the Stalkers, so I could see Dragon Princes making a little bit of a resurgence here. But both Stegodons just teeing off mostly on these Illyrian Reavers right now. Emperor doing a good job keeping his Prince and Life Mage kind of well out of range as well. Not taking too much damage there. And the Dragon Princes are able to advance without taking any damage, which is pretty significant, right? Yeah, so Dragon Princes looking back in, obviously physical resistance is similar to Grail Knights, right? Like I said, they have less HP per model. They do have more armor, more melee defense. 80 charge is just absolutely massive, but they don't have any special bonuses. No bonus versus infantry or large. 13 AP is also not amazing. 31 base weapon strength is pretty good, though, and with that 80 charge bonus, they can definitely dish out some pretty hefty damage. And here they're going to be used in very much kind of a hammer and anvil, right? So the whole idea is, as we know from before, using elite shock cavalry as support, like the classic Alexandrian hammer and anvil of striking your opponent who's been fixed by your infantry in the side or rear is really going to be the key. That being said, it's tricky, you know. The Dragon Princes in some ways are a little bit more forgiving because of that high melee defense and physical resistance. Against certain targets, they are less so because of that HP difference. But like the Stegodon here, for example, you know, 400 weapon strength, depending on the size of the cone, and I didn't check to see exactly. I know it has up to 7 splash attack targets, but in terms of like the actual cone of area that it could hit, because cavalry models are larger, potentially could only hit like up to maybe 3 or 4 of them, in which case it's going to confer, you know, the weapon damage, I believe, equally, right? And it's not quite enough to one-shot, especially after the physical resistance, but like 2 hits will just straight up kill a knight, right? Or a Dragon Prince in this case. That being said, only 30 melee defense, so as long as that 70 charge bonus isn't a factor, I mean, the melee defense of the Dragon Princes with that Martial Mastery will be high enough that they're not going to face as much risk, right? So, pretty interesting regardless. These Dragon Princes have made their way all the way around through the woods, and they're now going to collapse on some Skinks here, and they will take an alarming amount of damage given the, you know, kind of nature of this engagement, but you have to give them some credit. The Stegodons are firing in here also. They're really not taking much damage from the Skinks at all, and you would hope that they'd be able to just clearly wipe this unit But both Stegodons are now shooting in, and we can see that, yeah, just enough, and it even passes through the models quite brutally there, almost like a cannon shot would, exactly, right? So, not great. This is also potentially not great, but at the same time, you know, with the low attack of Stalkers and even Saurus Spears, after you factor in their anti-large bonus, they're still probably going to be about base hit chance or less against these Dragon Princes. This is really an unideal engagement for them on so many levels. You kind of got caught up in the woods here. They had a charge order, it looked like, on the Stalkers, but then the Court of Sotek and everything else just kind of blocks them, so they won't get their charge bonus. Fighting in the woods against a Grey Weapon infantry, really inopportune engagement, but that physical resistance and melee defense will help them hold. Just like here, you know, they get a nice surround charge on the Slaawn. They do some pretty good damage to him. The Stegodons come in and propose a huge potential danger, but the Prince diving in, popping that stand your ground to give them that extra 54 melee defense, basically like defensive cavalry almost at this point. And I believe we're also going to see some healing coming in soon. And also Shield of Thorns, just to give him that extra, there it is, upgraded Earthblood and Shield of Thorns to give him even more physical resistance. And that the base weapon damage, too, is also pretty good for them, considering the majority of their weapon damage is non-AP, right? So they're holding out quite well, despite being in what would seem to be an absolutely terrible engagement. They took some early damage, but are able to sustain that quite well. The other Dragon Princes managed to extricate themselves from that other bad engagement. They're going to get a brutal charge here into the Ancient Salamander. Although it does have 95 armor, it's got, as I joked about earlier, very little HP. And, I mean, its flaming attacks are going to do basically nothing to Dragon Princes in return, so that's a very safe engagement there. But they do peel back, try and protect what's left of these archers here from those pterodons, at least push them back up into the sky. The archers can maybe return a little bit of fire there. And the infantry fight largely going in the High Elves' favor. I mean, White Lions are just so good in this matchup. And lots of cycle charging from the Prince here, which is very effective. The Life Slaawn is definitely a good target for him to go after, but he has to be careful not getting countercharged just like that. With the 70 charge bonus of the Stegodon active, that is going to be a significant threat to him. So, have to be careful of that. The Life Slaawn getting terrified away there. A little bit of healing for the High Elves, as well as the Dragon Princes just kind of sit in a protection position here, just waiting for those Pterodons to make a move. You can see there with the explosion, like, it does enough missile damage to kill a single model, whatever it hits, but all the models around it basically take 0 damage, which is just fantastic. So again, not the best charge to be charging through the back like this, but the Saurus and the Skinks are actually low enough, and there's few enough models of the White Lions left that they actually do make pretty good contact there. And the Saurus Warriors, just being so low on health and leadership, probably going to break there. Meanwhile, the other Dragon Princes continuing to support this engagement against the Stegodons quite well. Getting the Slaawn caught up. He did come back from rout, obviously. That extra Shield of Thorns for more damage, up to 53 weapon damage. Pretty significant. Going to drop a little banishment to try and see them away, but the Prince gets there just in time, and the Dragon Princes do actually manage to outmaneuver. That's another thing I haven't mentioned. Dragon Princes are very fast for Elite Shock Cavalry. I think they're faster than Grail Knights. They might be the fastest Elite Shock Cavalry. You might have to double check me on that. We can look at Blood Knights and some others after, maybe, but yeah, the speed definitely benefits there as they're able to escape that, get back and contribute somewhat, breaking those supporting Skinks and getting a little bit of a surround. They're probably going to give up the fight here soon, and they do, getting terrified away. Has to be expected with them being so low, but still, another great engagement here, just seeking out this Ancient Salamander, which has used up all of its ammunition, probably got quite a bit of value. The Court of Sotek, again, not the most cost-effective engagement. The Court of Sotek will punch up pretty well, especially since they're unbreakable, and the whole thing with Shock Cavalry, kind of one of the main points of them, right, is in the way Warhammer leadership works, or in Total War in general, if you take a certain amount, like a certain percentage of your HP, right? Like, let's say, for example, you take 25% of your HP damage within, I don't know, 8 seconds or whatever it is, you actually take additional leadership penalties, you know, on top of the ones that you would suffer from taking that damage in the first place, right? It does add, kind of stack on top there, as the Lizardmen lurch towards army losses. And yeah, that shock damage, just dealing such a significant amount of their HP in a short time, is one thing that's kind of the hallmark of shock cavalry, right? Is to get that shock charge, do a ton of damage, and hopefully break a unit very quickly. Now, a lot of variables do end up going into that, but in practice, That's how, at least, they're supposed to work on paper. And here they did a pretty good job of that. I mean, some blunders, but nothing overly costly, and that is the one thing. Dragon Princes, in the right situation, are actually kind of tanky. And then there's some caveats to that, right? Like, a lot of things with high attack, high weapon strength, magic damage, you know, it's going to be dangerous to them, certainly, but here they were able to perform quite well. Definitely took some significant losses, but 151 kills, 53 kills here. Probably some more value against the Slann and so forth, but we'll look at that after the fact. Fast forward a little bit through this late game cleanup as the Dragon Princes both come in with the White Lions just absolutely collapse the court of Sotek. Lizardmen player going to try and make a stand here in the woods, I guess, to try and you know, have the cavalry be less effective, but obviously the Stegodon will be less effective in the woods as well, and who cares? I mean, just let the Griffin charge in and win, right? So, yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. Griffin does get hit a few times, but, man, I love the usage of the Prince on the Griffin here, and honestly, really nice cycle charging, kind of ping-ponging between targets back and forth on those Dragon Princes, and it's textbook, you know, how to use shock cavalry and even chariots and any shock unit, and the Griffins do sort of fall into that category. Absolutely, you know, they're high charge flying single entities. You do want to be cycle charging with them as well, so that concept can definitely be expanded to a lot of units. But here, both Dragon Princes netting some excellent value here and getting, yeah, just great kills all across the board. 3,000 damage value also on the Prince on the Griffin, which is just amazing. White Lions also trading pretty well here. Just great in this matchup overall. Yeah, archers can take some significant losses, but super cost-effective. Arguably the most cost-effective unit High Elves have. Stalkers do okay. You know, I didn't see exactly what they got their precursor volleys on, but if you can eat those with the Dragon Princes, it's probably good. I mean, they're, what, maximum... I think maximum resistance is 90%, so if you add their fire and physical, then you'd be getting max resistance, and they basically do 0 damage almost. Legion of Chocolates... pretty good. They just couldn't get in the right position, unfortunately, to counter the cavalry, and credit to the Emperor here for, you know, avoiding the Sora Spears as long as possible, and only really charging into them once he had a favorable rear charge situation there at the end. And, yeah, Ancient Salamander, pretty significant value. I'm very impressed, honestly. I need to try this thing out a little bit more for myself. It seems that because it's cheaper, it's less risky. I know with my ham fists, I tend to mismicro this thing and lose it pretty easily. Bow Stegodon's also pretty good value. I'm kind of, you know, you don't see these guys super often, but I do see them being useful in this particular matchup. But anyway, talking a little bit more about some of the challenges heavy cavalry face. There's a lot of, I mean, most elite and cavalry in general. I mean, like I said, Grail Knights are, I think, 112, I want to say. Chaos Knights with lances are, I think, the most out of any of these kind of elite shock cavalry. Blood Knights are in between the two, and then Dragon Princes, excuse me, are have the least amount of HP. But of course, Dragon Princes and Grail Knights both have physical resistance, at least while Grail Knights have Blessing of the Lady. Melee defense baseline is only 30, which is, you know, kind of in line with these other units here. Chaos Knights even better. Blood Knights also 40 baseline is quite good, but Blood Knights are also kind of a whole nother can of worms we'll probably get to on another video upcoming this week, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, Dragon Princes here. That 80 charge is pretty significant for this class. I mean, only 1,400 too, so they're actually the cheapest for once of any High Elves have, you know. It's an elite unit class, but yes, it's the cheapest, technically, I guess, of these sort of traditional elite shock cavalry. Yeah, the physical resistance and the martial mastery, if you can maintain this martial mastery into the late game especially, it is very nice. I would say, you know, perfect vigor for the Grail Knights is definitely better. In terms of a late game situation, it's, yeah, losing martial mastery is more of a problem, but, I mean, certainly it does give you the best melee defense in class while it's active. That combined with the physical resistance means, against sort of the, like, chaff type opponents, they are going to take less damage than some of these other cavalry will, it seems. I need to do a little bit more testing for myself on that, but in general, you probably should see these guys a little bit more often than you do, in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, though. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.